Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. This is Alan Schimmel, Editor-in-Chief of DevOps.com. Thanks and welcome for attending another DevOps.com webinar, this one sponsored by Automic and entitled Automate Your World, Continuous and Agile Siebel Deployments. Before I hand things over to our host, Ralph Passion, Senior Director of Worldwide Product and Solutions Marketing at Automic, I just wanted to make our audience aware of a few things. If you'd like, you can ask questions over in the question section of the interface, and if you'd like to use the chat as well, you're more than welcome to. And then you can follow along on Twitter at hashtag Agile Siebel, and we will try to get questions and comments out on there. So without further ado, let me hand this over to Ralph, and he will introduce our second participant today as well. Ralph, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you, Alan, for the introduction. Good morning, good afternoon. Depends on which region you're attending today. So welcome to the Automate Your World Masterclass series of Automic. Today with the continuous and Agile Siebel deployment use case presented by Mr. Anne Kootstra, Siebel Application Consultant from Accenture, and as mentioned from Alan, myself, Ralph Passion, Senior Director Product and Solution Marketing. Can you please click the next slide? So I want to give you a bio from our presenter today. Anne Kootstra is with Accenture around about 10.5 years as a responsible Siebel consultant, senior Siebel consultant for the huge customer implementations. So I'm happy to have him on board today talking about Siebel CRM. He's part of the Accenture Netherlands Delivery Center and really specialized in Siebel development and delivery. And he started the project. He wants to give you the inside out of the telecommunication provider where we did a project about Siebel deployment. Next one, please. Myself, I'm currently running the product and solution marketing department at Automic. I hold various numbers of positions in the software industry. I'm coming from a technical data center role, did several roles in product management, pre-sales, product marketing. I'm running the whole department. And this is exactly why we are, the understanding what I want to bring to our customers and partners is to give innovation value of the unique one automation platform from Automic. And this is one of the reasons why we set up this webinar masterclass series to give you an overview of use cases. We are doing this masterclass series since January. So you find it on atomic.com website, as we did a lot of DevOps.com, you'll find it there too. Talking about use cases, letting our customers, analysts, partners, telling you what they did with Automic. Next one, please. I have some slides to give you an overview of what Automic is doing. We are taking care about business automation. So we're taking care about business automation on a business process perspective, on an application process perspective, and also infrastructure process perspective. We go a little bit into it with the next slide, please. It's all about business outcomes. Business automation is all together with business outcomes. What are business outcomes? Next one, please. We're looking into business imperatives today. What is the business expecting? And we look into improved decision making. You will find a lot of IT projects around analytics, in-memory databases, big data, Hadoop integrations, gathering better data to make better decisions. And it's all about that. Business expects to make better decisions for the strategy for the next 3 years, for example. They also have business imperatives about acquire and retain customers, how to acquire new customers into my portfolio, how to retain them because competition is growing fast, especially if they are startups and running everything from scratch. It's all about drive business agility. How can I react on business is changing out in the market? How can I react on that? How to stay agile on that? Outsource non-core functions. Mergers, acquisitions, divestitures, it's not a new term, it's an old term, and used very, very heavily in the last 10 years. Improve efficiency and reduce costs. It's all about efficiency in processes, reduce costs in IT in total, also not a new term, but it's still a business imperative. Modernize the business, get rid of legacy applications, take the new world onto it, get more digital out there, reach your customers, and also governance, risk, and compliance, which is more and more a case the last years with all the regulations out there in the market. Altogether, I have one restriction. Next one, please. Without automation, the business will not getting there. They will not getting the desired outcomes. They will not reach it. And they will come into it and telling that this is business automation at the end. Next one. Can you click next one? Thank you. So we will now comparing the business imperatives with the complexity of the IT. And the IT is going more and more complex with technology add-ins like platform as a service, software as a service, and also infrastructure as a service, but also with existing systems like applications you have already in place, like Siebel, we're talking today about, like databases you have already in place, like service bus integrations, like unstructured data, new data with big data coming in. You have to manage all that, and the complexity and the diversity impedes really the agility and the business value, which is, by the way, expected from the business. So it doesn't work well in that case, so we have to have something who takes care about it from an automation perspective. Next one, please. We created years ago a platform, which we call a One Automation platform. We created 3 products on top of it. One is work automation, which you see in the right side of this One Automation platform. It's called work automation, taking care about all this automation on the workload itself, on business processes, on application processes like SAP, like Oracle, like Siebel, like Salesforce, many others out there in the market. You see on the left side service orchestration, taking care about infrastructure orchestration, taking care about anything goes to Amazon EC2, private cloud, public cloud, on-prem, hybrid handling, taking care about all the needs you have to be more agile or getting the decision making. And what we are talking about today is release automation in the middle as a product, and today with the use case Siebel, and we can do more than just Siebel, but the case today we're talking about is Siebel, and the release automation is a product to take care about a Siebel deployment in huge companies, and it's running on the same platform than the product service orchestration and the product work automation. It combines all the capabilities of automation to improve, to reach out the outcomes and needs of the business imperatives, and integrates with the IT as it is today. Next one, and it's my last one. Can I hand over? Thank you. Why Atomic? We have a singular focus on business automation. We're not doing anything else. We just do business automation. We are focused on it. We're not doing any ITSM tools. We are not doing anything on monitoring. We just focus on our experience we have since many years. 650 employees today, about across 15 regional centers, 24/7 global support, many technology centers in place, our own institute and lab centers, 3 products in place, work automation, release, and service orchestration. And we are mentioned as a category leader by several analysts. And if you're interested, Forrester did a webinar with us about Horizon 2020 converged automation, which is talking the same. Island of automation can get together. Converged automation have to build together to help the business to reach out to the business imperatives. With this, I want to hand over to Mr. Anne Kootstra. I'm happy to have him on board today and doing the presentation. So welcome, Anne.
Thank you very much, Ralph. Today I'd like to talk about what we did at the client use case and how the Atomic Aura solution, what kind of a role it played in there, and what the benefits were. So highlight, I will discuss a few minutes about what is Accenture, so my employer, what it is that Siebel does. Some of you may or may not be familiar with what the Siebel application does, so I'll spend a few minutes on that as well. What was the problem that we tried to solve with Atomic Aura, and what were the benefits to the client for this? So I'll briefly cover all of these topics. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or in the message box, and we'll cover them at the end of the presentation. So what is Accenture? Accenture is a global management consulting firm. We specialize in a lot of areas, consulting, technology services, outsourcing. All in total, we have well over 300,000 people serving clients all across the globe, roughly about 120 countries and territories. All of this allows us to bring a lot of experience and capabilities to different types of business, different industries, and the ability to do our own research to improve either business processes or tools in order to allow our clients to become more successful, more efficient at what it is that they are doing. Well, high level, the revenues are in the billions, and the part that I'm a member of is the Netherlands, and we roughly have about 2,300 employees. So if we're looking at our organization, we're divided into different areas. We have a strategy area, digital area, and operations area, which is the focus areas that we have. There are two other areas as well. I'll touch upon them in a few minutes. So we can help our clients at every level from the CIO right down to those people that work on the business processes themselves. If you look at the digital area, we do a lot of work there as well, and we provide a lot of advice to our clients, as well as in the operational area. If we look at the industries and at technology, you can look at it in two ways. Industries is the area where we bring additional expertise to our client. We do not only understand the tools that we help them implement or provide them with advice, but we also know their industry in depth. A lot of our consultants have undergone specific training for an industry, and in my case that would be the telecommunications industry. If you look at our technology abilities, we are a preferred partner for Oracle and SAP and many other applications as well. Of course, my focus point is Oracle, so this is my area of expertise, and that is also reflected in my part in the overall delivery network. So if you look at where I am in the delivery network, is we have a global delivery network with in different parts of the world. In our case, my part of the world is the Netherlands, Europe, and then the Netherlands. So if we look at Siebel, what is Siebel? Siebel is a CRM application. Started off as a sales tool, and then gradually grew into something which is a lot more than just sales supporting. It supports different business processes across different industries. So if you look at the processes as horizontals and the industries as verticals, then Siebel is an Excel matrix of different solutions for different types of clients and different industries. It started off in the mid-80s, and then later on was helped by Accenture when we started selling their product and improving upon it. And then in the end, Oracle acquired Siebel and rounded off the acquisition a few years ago. Siebel is still a brand name that is carried by Oracle, but it is an application within the larger enterprise of Oracle applications. So if you look at Siebel itself, so Forrester has considered it to be one of Oracle's key assets when looking at customer experience. Customer experience is a suite of applications within the Oracle domain. Siebel is one of the applications in there, but it is the predominant CRM application within that suite. If you look at what kind of installations are we talking about, the average size is about 500 agents. So these will be the end users logged into the application itself. However, there are installations that have grown well beyond that limitation, where you would be talking about implementations that span all time zones of the world and with active users running into the thousands. It is very strong in the call center area, especially in the telecommunications industry. However, it is not the only area where it is very strong in. You can also use the case management module or application in mostly the governmental sectors. However, there are several other tools and modules that you can extend Siebel with to allow you to do a lot of other business process improvements. If we're looking at clients across the different industries, you can see the big names in any of the in any of the sectors. So most of the big governments are using Siebel. Within the telecommunications industry, you see all of the big names as well as in the financial sector. Most of the big names in the financial sector are Siebel users. So it is a respected application across all domains. If you look at who's the competition, looking in the context of Siebel, it is of course Salesforce, which is one of the leading competitors of Siebel. I would say a lot of the different systems that you see are competitors in the CRM area, but I would say that Siebel is a very strong contender because it is a very broad application. You can run a service module and a sales module and an order management module, whereas not all of the other systems have that reach of functionality. However, there might be a context in which Siebel is not the preferred way. For example, if you have an SAP strong enterprise, then you would probably prefer a SAP CRM implementation for CRM. If you look at our competitors, Accenture's competitors, well, the big names of the big IT firms are there as well, and typically we are considered to be a very strong strategist and offering service provider. So the client that we implemented Atomic Aura with is a telecommunications operator in the Netherlands. It has offerings in both the wired and wireless domain, and has propositions in both the consumer and business market. The Siebel installation that I have been working on, it has multiple, deals mostly with account order and service management, and the other installation also deals with the same domains but including partner management as well. So if we look at the high-level usage of Siebel, so a call center agent connects with a web server connects with application server connects with the database. So these are the basic elements of Siebel: a web server, application server, and of course a database server. Web servers tend to be also used by the order orchestration systems that are in place with our customer. The orders are obtained from the portal application and then through the middleware application are relayed to Siebel where it is stored. So during a deployment, when we have to bring down the Siebel web service and application service, of course the order orchestration systems cannot continue, so an order has to be held in limbo somewhere before it can be stored into Siebel. Call center agents are also not able to access the client information, which when customers call is a bit of a hassle. So this is the reason why Accenture and Atomic were asked to have a good look at the system and to come up with a proposal that would adhere to these two principles. Maximum availability of systems that are vital to the call center, and reduce the implementation durations of Siebel during a production go-live. So this translates into making sure that the business is impacted as little as possible, and that the applications and information about the client are available as long as possible. If we look at Siebel at a typical go-live, what are the main activities? So if we have the three main components of Siebel, the web service, the application service, and the database, so what are the activities that we have to do during a typical quarterly release? Well, of course, we have to stop all of the applications and web servers. We don't typically have to stop the database server, so that's not an issue. We have to transfer files that are part of the deployment package. However, after the application is brought up technically, we still have a lot of data to deploy as well, and many of the data elements need to be done through manual actions in the administration screens. The same goes for flushing of caches. Typically, Siebel, the first time a particular functionality is triggered, it caches the configuration and then uses the cached configuration until the cache is refreshed. If we look at all of these activities, what are the typical problems that you run into? Well, some of them are very easy to spot: manual actions, manual errors. And we typically do see quite a lot of manual errors in a Siebel deployment. A Siebel deployment of a decent sized release will include 20, 30, 40 different files and different deployment mechanisms to be involved. So it is easily conceivable that you would pick the wrong file or simply forget to deploy a particular file, or deploy a particular file in the incorrect order. One of the areas that we also typically have a lot of problems with is the effort. It is having so many different deployable objects accounts to a lot of work to be done. And if you have a small team to do all of these deployments, the more work there is, the longer the downtime will take. So this directly has a consequence of the third item, limited availability of environments. And also don't think about just the production environment, also consider all of the other environments as well. The longer a deployment takes, the reduced availability you have. Manual errors tend to be also the main cause for environment-specific problems. So a problem that only exists either in production or in one of the test environments, but cannot be reproduced in any of the other environments. One of the other areas, if you use manual deployments or if you use simple command line scripting, is that you don't know what happened when or and for what reason. So the compliancy and the auditing of who did what and where and when is also not available. One of the things that we run into as well is that the way of working, the way of developing software, the way of developing software and bringing it to production, the timelines included in that, are changing as well. They go by many terms, but Agile is probably the common denominator. People want to have shorter development life cycles, bring code earlier to production or as fast as possible. If you're doing this in a manual way, you will not be able to have multiple deployments in a single day, maybe not even within a single week, and therefore these deployment or these duration timelines for development will not be met. Last but certainly not least is the amount of skill involved for all of this manual work is rather high, and so we are asking very skilled people to do very tedious work. And it is also a skill level that is not easily obtained and should also be maintained. And this is typically an issue for people working in these kind of areas. So if we looked at all of these issues and we looked at different solution scenarios that we could think of, offshoring is of course one of them. However, it depends on how you look at the problem. If cost is one of your issues, then this is of course a way of approaching it. You can reduce or at the same level of cost provide a higher level of service or more options. However, although this may increase capacity, it probably will not increase quality. The second scenario that we have is custom command line scripting. Well, the advantages is it will be a solution that is tailor-made to your particular need. It will reduce the amount of effort involved because you will be automating things, and through automation you will certainly have an increased level of quality. But the problem with custom command line scripting in combination with Siebel is you will not be able to cover 100% of all of the deployable objects. If you look at script and if you look at the complexity of script required to do all of this, you are talking about writing an application at that level of complexity is involved. Reusability is, I would say, limited because the script tends to be either application or operating system specific. So if you're running a mix of different operating systems, you will have to rewrite that script in order to include the different operating systems as well. Because this tends to be written as a side job on top of all of the other work that people are doing, documentation tends to be lacking. So even though the application may be working very well, I would say the code is probably not very well documented. The third option is an option that was provided to us by Oracle. It's called ALX. It is an automated tool that Oracle provides to its Siebel customers. It is based on Excel and .NET or VBA, and it has many of the drawbacks that all of the others also have. It doesn't cover all of the deployable objects involved, and there is and the limitations, of course, of having to use Excel is that you require a Windows machine, having Office installed, and probably requires a manual action as well. There are third-party deployment frameworks. In that sense, Atomic is not the only one in the business. However, if you look at the way that they are currently interfacing with Siebel, it is all through command line. So all of the benefits that you have and drawbacks that you have with custom command line scripting, you will see in these applications as well. It will merely be a more feature-rich version of custom command lines. So, what does the Atomic Ara Siebel solution look like? There are two parts to it, which is are the out-of-the-box Ara actions. So these are the standard file transfer, shell interaction, and SQL loading type of actions, and these are part of the standard Atomic Ara implementation, which is exactly what we expected them to do. The second part is where we help them with some additional knowledge specifically about Siebel, to interact with Siebel through a Java API, the Siebel Java Bean. The Java API, as opposed to the command line interface, provides us with a lot more feedback. So when things go well, even within command line, things will go just fine and you will have the expected result. However, when you're running in command line mode, handling errors, handling rainy day scenarios is much more complex, and not all of the information is directly returned at the command line, but may require a log file analysis before really determining if everything went right. Whereas with Java, you will get a direct feedback of this current status. So if we're looking at all of the different items that you can deploy, so we would have audit trail items, data validation, organizations, divisions, positions, job templates, responsibilities, runtime events, workflows, workflow policies. All of these share a common way of deployment. And we looked at all of the different objects that we had been deploying over the years, and we grouped them as best as we can into either ADM, EAI, XML, or when no other alternative existed, by simulating the UI itself. This gave us about 90% coverage. However, we had as a target set ourselves 100% coverage. So everything that we ever did, we wanted to be able to deploy using Atomic Ara. So this meant that we had a few more things that we needed to do, which we needed to have a different solution for. So we went back and we had to look, okay, how is it being done in Siebel itself, and then replicating that through the Siebel Java Bean. And this led us to also include Siebel system preferences, but also workflow activation and task activation. This way, we were able to automate all of your out-of-the-box vanilla deployment objects. And this is, I think, a very, very important thing to be able to state, that we are able to cover everything. So it's a full hands-off deployment. So what does the process look like now? Your administrator is now looking slightly more happy because it is using Atomic Ara. It doesn't have to do all of the manual labor. Using the out-of-the-box features of the release automation platform, you can schedule or do an ad hoc deployment. You can monitor a deployment. Basically, it's choosing a package, pointing it to a specific environment, and then having the flow do its thing. It will do the same things as you would normally do manually. So you would still have to do the stopping of the servers. It will be done by Ara this time around, and it will process all of the objects that need to be deployed onto the environment, including the data. So start stop of the application server, do a repository import, import the XML files, import all of the other data files, and flush the caches and do the file transfers. So if we then look at what are the results, so what are the improvements that we have been able to achieve using Atomic Ara? If we do a complete deployment, so this is an ADM file, an SRF deployment, and the import of a repository. For those that are not familiar with Siebel, repository is a very big database file that needs to be imported. And on average is somewhere between a few hundred megs and 1 to 2 gigabytes. Before Ara, that took about 200 minutes. After we deployed Ara, we reduced it by 30% to just over 2 hours. So this is a significant reduction. However, it's still a lot of time. And so that's the reason why I've highlighted also a few other scenarios to allow you to see what the impact of, for example, the import of repository is. The import of repository typically is about an hour and a half. So if we only look at an average deployment, let's say an ADM request, a workflow, and an SRF, then currently, before Ara, we were looking at a deployment time of about an hour and a half. After Ara, we're looking at a deployment window of just over 15 minutes. If we're looking at purely a data deployment, let's say we have 100 ADM requests, and remind you, ADM can be a lot of different things. It's not just one typical object. It could be a multitude of different objects in there. If you would be looking at a 1-hour deployment, now you can do it in minutes. So overall, we were looking at a deployment window required for just purely for Siebel. There are multiple applications in a single release, so this does not constitute the full deployment window required. But for Siebel, we required about 8 hours, and now typically we see a reduction to 1 hour. These are the deployment reductions, and this is what the business, of course, was looking at. So how can we ensure that the business is up and running as quickly as possible after a software deployment? However, there are also indirect results. We're seeing a lot of improvement in environment-related defects. So an issue that is specific to one environment and one environment only, because the same package is identically deployed. We also see an increased availability of non-production environments. Our business case was driven by quality, but if we had based it on a return on investment of hours, then we could have easily had a return on investment based on the innovation budget used for waiting on environments. The same applies also for QA teams. So if an test environment is down, they're not able to test. So this way, they can go back to work faster and do more within the same time frame. Like I said before, the manual labor involved in a traditional Siebel deployment is very repetitive. It's importing files, so import, yes, click, OK. So this is not the most fun part of the job, and so if you're looking at ops teams that have to do this on a daily basis, then I can certainly imagine that at some point they say, well, maybe this is not for me. So having Atomic Aura do a lot of the manual repetitive work for them also frees up their time to do more interesting stuff, to focus on quality improvement or to automate even other applications as well. You could also consider this to be an opportunity to reduce the team size. If you have a very large team and you need to reduce the team for cost saving, then of course this is a good approach as well. And like I said before, in order to really work in a more agile way, whichever flavor of agile you adhere to, it comes down to a principle of being able to deploy in a standard way. And I think that without automating your deployment, you will not be able to work as fast and work as quickly as possible without it. So I think that in that sense, Siebel Atomic Aura is able to help you with that as well. So these are the topics that I've highlighted. Based on the previous session, there will probably be a lot of questions. So I think I'd like to hand over to Ralph.
Thank you, Anne. Great presentation. Excellent, deep insight what's going on in Siebel deployment. We want to give you some additional info about downloading a data sheet on www.atomic.com. Also, you can request a demo about the automated Siebel deployment to look a little bit deeper into that. Can you click next slide, please? Before we start a Q&A, so feel free again, Alan said it already, feel free to ask the questions in the chat or in the Q&A panel. And we will try to make it happen that we get all answers out. We are limited in time. So first of all, some housekeeping, upcoming events, webinars, 29th of April. We're running a webinar about orchestrating automated service now. You can check it out at atomic.com. In the next 2 days, we will go to registration, we will go online. Contact info from my side again, Ralph Paschen, you see the LinkedIn, you can easily find me. There's not so much Ralph Paschen on LinkedIn on there. And also you can follow me on Twitter if you like. So I got some questions via LinkedIn email message, which is great. I'm happy about it, that people are already connected to me. So we start a Q&A. I want to give the chance to the audience. Are there any questions from on your side, Alan?
Ralph, I'm sorry, I had a little technical difficulty. Well, the one question I think was answered, which was, are the slides and recording of this webinar going to be available? And of course, we here at DevOps.com, we will have them available within 24 to 48 hours, both the slides and then a combined slide and audio YouTube video.
Yeah, same for us. We are sharing that information, so feel free to join us on that. I got some questions via email, so I would like to start that.
Okay.
First of all, what's the question? How would you start? Oh, this is a good question for you, Anne. How would you start a Siebel deployment project when you go into a customer? I don't think that it's meant by a new installation. I mean, it's more of an existing. Or could somebody start with a deployment project there? Well, what would you approach as a consultant?
The approach that we followed and that was working quite well for us is start at the start of a release. So if you want to make sure that all of the parties, like your environment management team, your application management team, to gain the experience needed and the confidence needed to use this tool also in deployment, then my advice is to pick a particular release and at the start of the release, deploy everything that needs to be deployed using the new framework. And that way, the team's confidence grows and the tool matures over the release, the time of the release takes, and use it then to also go to production.
Okay. I have another question about your traditional solutions of deployment. You wrote that down in the table. You mentioned with the command line, which of them are typically used more often, and why they are using that? Is there no other reason that there's no Java API or something?
Well, the Java API has been available for a while, but I think if you're looking at the people who typically do all of these deployments, they work a lot on the command line, and I think that this is a skill set that they return to pull all of these applications together. So I think it is much more about the skill set that people have and the confidence that they have in using these tools. So in my view, and what my experience has been, that most people will revert to command line scripting to use in most of their implementations.
Okay. I think who wrote this question is typical developer. I can write everything on my own. Oh, that's true. It's true for everything. Why should I use the ARA tool? I think you mentioned that with command line you cannot deploy 100% out of it, and I think so this is the answer of it. Correct?
Command line you can't do 100%, and if you look at all of the features that ARA comes with, being able to pick a particular package and point to a particular server, all of these features come out of the box. So really, do you want to be programming a lot of command line script and make that part of your job, or do you want to do more fun stuff? That's basically how I look at it.
I think everybody comes out of the IT wants to do the fun stuff and be early at home, not be on the weekend on there. I got the point. Hopefully your questions are answered on that. Another question is about rollback capabilities. If the ARA atomic tool is able to roll back, from an ARA perspective, it's possible to roll back. The functionality is in there. I don't know if you implemented that into the Siebel deployment. I'm not sure. It's not a functionality problem alone. It's is the application ready for this rollback capabilities? Correct? Did you implement that?
We didn't implement full rollback. Files can be easily rolled back because typically it's a renaming convention that you use. Whereas if you're looking at a Siebel deployment, the data deployment is so complex that rolling back an incorrect data deployment is probably going to create more problems than it solves. So in those cases, I would recommend creating a flash restore point in your database, and then if there's any data type of problem, just do a full rollback and then replan your deployment.
Okay. Hey, Ralph, and
yeah.
Just so there's some new questions in the question bar. I don't know, Ralph, if you have access to those.
No, I don't see them. Can you start a question?
Sure. This is a question. Can we use this tool to clear IE browser cache for the users remotely? Was a very specific question, I guess, for Anne.
Well, more or less for Anne, I think.
The browser cache on Siebel. Well, in my view, this is a Windows operating system problem if you're looking at it from the end users, so the people who are actually logging into Siebel itself. And I think that, well, maybe there is support in ARA for it, but not in the Siebel area of it. So Siebel just takes care. The Siebel ARA solution just takes care of the Siebel deployment itself, and I think your workplace solution will have to take care of the deployment of ActiveX controls and any refresh of caches on the individual end user computers.
Great. Another question, does this, and probably Anne for you as well, does this utility cover product catalog deployment as well?
Yes.
Okay. That was a short one. Here's a question. Did I understand correctly that the out-of-the-box Atomic ARA product already supports the deployment of any type of Siebel object customization, or is that only the customization made into ARA for that Dutch customer that Anne described? Ralph, Anne, either
yeah,
one?
I will answer that. We are working on the whole solution. We are building the solution within development. So we're improving that whole template, do it more and more. We have a lot of customers on our place. We did a lot of POCs. So we're improving the product more and more. Siebel is, and I talked with Anne also about that today. Siebel, from a deployment perspective, is a beast. It's a big one, and it's changing all the time. But we have to follow that, what Oracle is changing on it. So we are taking care of that. This Siebel deployment is working well. It's not a consulting-based solution just for this telecommunication provider. For us, it's we have a first integration with Siebel to make it happen, and we get a fast integration into it, as fast deployment on it. Do we cover all of that? I have to get back to you. For me, Siebel is too big to cover everything for now, but we did most.
Rob, I have another question that I think is for you. When you mentioned using Automate, excuse me, when you mentioned using Automate ARA tool, reduce deployment time to less than 1 hour, is this optimized to parallelize some of the deployment tasks? That might be an Ani question, but
yes. So certain objects, we've put the objects in sequence. So the objects that are dependent upon other objects are, of course, placed first. And whenever possible, we use parallelization. In particular, with the ADM objects, the data deployments. This is where we do a lot of the parallelization and increase the performance of the deployment speed. So yes, parallelization is part of the overall solution.
Absolutely. Ralph, I think that was all the questions I had in the question bar. If you want to go back to your email questions.
Yeah, I just have one, and if there's no question coming up, then I would hand over for the closing. So last question, I think this is for us both. Anne is all about environment handling. So the question is, how do you handle the environments? Because development, let me see if I development, user acceptance, and production are completely different, which is the case not just for Siebel, it's everywhere the same in any application. How do you handle that from an ARA perspective? I would like to answer that and hand over to Anne for the inside view on it. For us, we have an environment manager in there, which you take care about that. You're taking the environment. Let's say you have a web server database. In the development, it's one system. And the UAT and the user acceptance testing, it's one web server and one database server. And the production, it's 3 web servers, 1 database server. The packaging is the same. The packaging is the same. It depends on the environment. So you put the package on the same system on the development. You're putting the packages for web server and database separately, and deploy them with one process flow. And you're doing the same for production. So it's all about how you handle the environment in your deployment and hand over all of this stuff into your environment. So it's environment handling. Anne, anything to add here?
No, it's configuration. So you have an application server. If that happens to have the same URL or the same host name as your web server, then it's the split and making it web server versus application server. That's the split that you make, and the host name is irrelevant.
Okay. No more questions from my side. Ellen, from your side, any questions?
I believe that's all on the questions.
Okay.
And for those who asked questions, thank you. There were some great questions in there. Also, thank you for a great insight into Siebel CRM and what you folks are doing at Accenture. And Ralph, as always, you did a great job. I think we're going to keep you around.
Thank you all. Thank you, Anne, for a great presentation too. So can you, so Helen, and hand over to you. Back to you.
Yes. Okay, everyone. Since there are no more questions, we will end things here again. This is Alan Schimmel, Editor-in-Chief of DevOps.com, and I want to thank Atomic for being today's sponsor of another great webinar. We will be doing more in the future. Stay tuned, and you can find out about more DevOps.com webinars, obviously on DevOps.com under our events and webinar section. Ralph, thank you again for a great job. Ani, thank you again for a great job. For those of you who stayed here till the end, thank you. And until next time, this is Alan Schimmel for DevOps.com. Have a great day, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.